Hey, good afternoon. Before I thank Bruce, I want to thank Jeff Brenzel and the entire TD community for the opportunity to talk with you over the next couple days. More than an honor for me, it's a pleasure to be with so many friends of mine, of our city, and our great university here in New Haven. I want to also thank Bruce, less for his introduction, and I could say this to Bruce, it was so hopelessly incomplete, Bruce. There's so much more you could have said about me. But less for his introduction and more for his friendship and guidance over the years. He and Chris Alexander's commitment to their adopted city is extraordinary. And unlike me, Bruce and Chris were not born here. They're here by choice, and I'm grateful for all that you guys do for the city. So thanks so much. And I look forward to talking with you all in a few minutes when you will use the microphones if you have questions. It seemed appropriate for me to talk about cities and civic infrastructure. And that's what I thought about from the moment Jeff extended me this opportunity, and particularly wanted to do so in something that we knew was going to happen about this time, which is the substance of ensuring that New Haven public school students have the aspiration for college, that they're college ready once they matriculate into school, and therefore connected to lifelong earning. I will tell you that I am convinced it is the key wealth creation, violence reduction, and city building opportunity of our time. Now first, therefore, civic infrastructure. And by civic infrastructure, what I mean are the things around which we organize our lives and the lives of our community. Now, not all lessons are learned in the classroom, so let me tell you how John came to learn about civic infrastructure. I am a lifelong city resident, as Bruce said. I grew up in the Morris Cove neighborhood of New Haven. Now, my family, in fact, moved to Morris Cove in 1960 as that special and unique kind of New Haven refugee. We were not escaping political or religious persecution. Rather, it was the forced relocation that was so common to America in the 1950s and 60s, and which was particularly destructive to New Haven and so many other cities. My family were refugees from New Haven urban renewal. I-91 construction took my grandmother's house, where 4 households and 3 generations of DeStefanos had lived together for decades. Lived together, if not in exactly peace and harmony, at least in relative coexistence with one another. We lived on East Street between State and Humphrey. Here's a photo of my grandmother's house. It's now an I-91 overpass. Our neighborhood and the whole social and dynamic fabric that derived from a dense urban place was destroyed. It no longer exists. In our family's instance, as happened in neighborhoods across New Haven, attempts to build the new civic infrastructure actually destroyed it. First lesson learned about civic infrastructure is the cure can be worse than the disease. So anyways, Morris Cove is on the other side of the Quinnipiac Bridge from where we are today. So growing up, I didn't have much occasion to come to this side of the city. In fact, it wasn't until I was 13 or 14 years old that I first came onto this campus. I had 3 DeStefano cousins who actually attended Yale College, and I came over one day with my dad to visit. Now, as a New Haven police officer of his time, my father had rather definite views of Yale College and its inhabitants. So by virtue of both parental inclination and pretty mediocre academics, Yale was not a factor in that part of my future. And truth be told, to my younger eyes, it was a very different part of New Haven. In fact, a part from New Haven, rather than a part of New Haven. You could see it, you could feel it, the idea that the university was an integral piece of the whole of the city, did not exist in those days. Today, that has changed in my years since that first visit to campus. That change is a good thing, for which I will say Rick Levin and so many others are much to be credited. And I think it's gotten to the point that it's something we will never return to and never should change back to. Our future is bound up in one another. It's the same future. Lesson learned, always define community and citizenship in the broadest fashion possible to include not just some, but everybody. Have a big vision of what we are. Now, the next part of my lesson about civic infrastructure did occur at school as part of my own college-going experience, which was at the University of Connecticut. Unfortunately, those were the days when Yale still could defeat us in basketball and football. Happily, here too, things have changed for the better. An enduring source of amazement for me about attending UConn in the late 1970s was the tuition, or really the lack of it. Tuition, fees, room and board, was $4,000 for a full year. It was something I and lots of other kids were able to earn during the summer and during winter break, and really didn't even think very much about it back in those days. Nor do I ever recall a time when going to college was a question in my life. We were middle class, second-generation Americans, and we were going to be first-generation college goers. Not really a topic of discussion with mom and dad, if you know what I mean. In those days, if you worked hard, if you displayed the aspiration and the persistence, the means existed for college and lifelong earnings. But since that time, college is not nearly as affordable for most Americans. The nation has fallen from first in the percentage of our population who are college graduates, and at the same time, right, a college degree is more essential than ever for lifelong success. In New Haven, we were building highways when we first should have been about the business of building human capital. The academic success of kids, their college readiness, and their persistence in college going is the moonshot of our time. It is the best wealth creation and violence reduction strategy that we can hope to ever pursue. Consider 3 sets of data. Since 1992, the number of Americans employed with high school degrees or less has fallen from 47 million Americans to 44 million, drop of 7%. At the same time, over that time, the number of Americans employed with some college or more has grown from 53 million Americans to 78 million Americans, an increase of 47%. The numbers are pretty straightforward. If you want a job, get to college. Second, the more education you have, the less likely you are to be unemployed. A lot less likely, particularly in this tough economy. And finally, the higher level of educational attainment, the less likely you are to be in jail. If we want a safe city, we will dramatically increase college going among our young people. I was trying to figure out who the 1% of those jailed with bachelor's degree were. I figured they were my colleague mayors, actually. The civic infrastructure to rebuild a resurgent America runs straight through the front doors of our nation's universities and colleges, and most likely those front doors are to be found in America's cities. So what about cities? Now, the last time I gave a speech of some length about cities was in 2003. In fact, it was November 2003, and I was president of the National League of Cities. I was at the National Press Club in Washington at the time, and the talk was being broadcast on C-SPAN, which really didn't mean anything until we got to the last question. Now, have you ever been to one of these things or seen these? At the end of the speech, the president of the club collects the questions on these little 3x5 index cards and asks the questions to speaker. So I'm out of town. No one really knows me there that can vote for me. So I'm kind of frank and loose. And I'm about through the whole thing, and we get to the last question. And the last question is the question that any New Haven politician wants to avoid because it requires a response of transparency and conviction on a matter that really divides people in New Haven. So I'm here at this thing. I'm almost out. Last question at the press club. They ask me, so Mayor, is it Sally's or Pepe's? Now I freeze. This is a question of significance and consequence for me. Is it Sally's on the one hand, or is it Pepe's? So I ask you to think about that question. Is that what we are about as a city, Great Abitz? It's sort of like you can get a hamburger here, or you can come to New Haven and, of course, get this. It's not just about Abitz and hamburgers, really. That's just shorthand. It's shorthand for how we and others see the city and see ourselves. It's a kind of nickname, but it's not who we are. In the end, cities are about a lot more than Abitz and hamburgers, and so let me explain. In our lives and over time of this nation, cities are the wealth multipliers. Cities create our middle class, our markets, and our competitiveness. They have done this generation after generation without fail in America. Cities test and define our values as a nation and as a people. Cities are the place we come together to determine our potential and possibilities as individuals. It's the place that enables us to do together for ourselves the things we cannot do alone. And in the process of doing so, social and economic mobility occur as wealth and personal development accrue. Cities, when married to good, sound civic infrastructure, is the community highway we build to perfect ourselves, in which we become a nation bound up in a shared set of values, in short, a place where we become Americans. Now, the most poetic description of cities I ever heard was spoken in 1988, just a few blocks from here at Yale Commons, December 1988, the 25th anniversary of Hill Health Centers. The speaker said, cities are viewed as the stimulating and valuable centers of human activity because when disparate energies are harnessed, extraordinary achievement flourishes. Think of cities great and small, and much more than commerce and law and trade will come to mind, though they will. So will the names of great hospitals and libraries and newspapers and universities. So also will theaters and museums and opera houses and restaurants and galleries and cathedrals. So will stadia and arenas. In short, not simply commerce, but culture, not simply work, but leisure, not simply, as the Romans said, negotium, but otium, not simply that which ennobles us, but also that which perfects us. Such has forever been the purpose of a city, to make us not the best that nature can make us, but the best that we, humankind, adding art to nature, can make us. So said Bart Giamatti, former president of Yale, before he got an important and meaningful job as commissioner of baseball. Now, at first glance, thinking about Bart's words, you'd think he was talking about the built space, great hospitals and libraries and universities, theaters, museums, houses, restaurants, galleries, cathedrals, stadia, arena. That was not what he was talking about. If that's what he was talking about, we should go out and build another coliseum for a hockey club. What really it's about was this. Cities are viewed as the most stimulating and valuable centers of human activity because when disparate energies, read that to be density, are harnessed Extraordinary achievement flourishes. The whole is more than the sum of the parts. To make us not the best that nature can make us, but the best that we, humankind, adding art to nature can make us, doing together what we can't do alone. The built space in the final analysis is like the Abits and the hamburgers. It's incidental. The civic infrastructure that counts is not the building capital, it's the human capital. And that's what cities are and always have been about. And if we're going to remain a great nation, that's what our future has to be all about. So over the last 2 years, New Haven has been engaged in a powerful and dramatic effort at public school change. And last week, the university and the city took a wonderful step forward on behalf of young people across the city, for which this city and university share a common purpose. Last week, the New Haven Promise Scholarship Program was launched. Promise is the college-going component of New Haven's School Change Initiative. The individual benefits of increasing the number of New Haven college graduates is astounding. It is amazing. Students with college degrees are almost 4 times less likely to be unemployed than high school dropouts and have annual wages 2.5 times more on average. If New Haven Promise moves the needle on its 3 goals, cultivating an aspiration for college education in New Haven public schools, building community and parental engagement, and growing economic development in the city of New Haven by just 1% a year, we could initially see a talent dividend of some $647 million. So, last week, our city made a promise to build something more ambitious than an urban renewal project. Last Tuesday, we told our New Haven public school students that if they did 2 things, work hard academically, graduating from high school with a 3.0 GPA, and second, display good civic behavior, meaning have a positive disciplinary record, complete a 40-hour community service requirement, and meet 90% attendance or better. If they did those 2 things, New Haven Promise will fund their tuition for any in-state public university or college, period. Now, it's not a handout. Promise is not designed for or entitled to be, or intended to be, an entitlement. Students will have to work hard to earn their grades and stay focused on positive behavior and good choices. But do those 2 things, and Promise will see to it that they have the resources to compete successfully anywhere. And if our city does this and does nothing else, we will fail. Fail just as large as urban renewal failed in remaking our city 50 years ago. It's not enough to put a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow for the kids who are going to reach it anyway. Promise will only succeed if we make all New Haven kids be the best that they can be. It can only succeed if we put in place the infrastructure, the supports, and the tools for a superhighway, not just a limited access road for the very few who already know the way. Only with supports, only with robust civic support, can these kids in our city be the very best it can be. The Promise Scholarship Program, announced last week, must be accompanied by some things. The development of the aspiration in all New Haven kids and their families that a college degree is a prerequisite to a successful life. That this is something that these kids and their families can do. That we as a community are going to work hard together and as necessary to see that they have every chance of making it to and ultimately through college, and that Promise is a core component of a radical and uncompromising commitment to a broader school change initiative. So a week ago today, we announced the New Haven Promise Scholarship. And tomorrow, we will announce the New Haven Promise Partnership. The partnership will be an additional umbrella of funders, organizations, employers, and people who will organize themselves as a community of adults around Promise kids and their families. The partnership will work on our streets and in our schools. It will be phased in over the next 5 years as we phase in the scholarship program, commencing with pilot initiatives this spring. New Haven Promise Partnership will launch with the following 3 supports. First, the partnership will work with classroom teachers in the high schools by guiding students through the college process. These supports for our high school students will be provided by a partner by the name of College Summit and will focus on academic excellence, self-advocacy, career-to-college connections, College 101, and financial awareness. The partnership will work with the New Haven Promise to increase the number of Promise scholarships awarded to graduating seniors, as well as increasing the college enrollment rates, college persistence rates, and college graduation rates. Second, the partnership will message and develop curriculum for our students starting in pre-kindergarten and continuing through 8th grade, before transition to the even more intensive high school curriculums and supports. The pre-K to 8 curriculum will seek to cultivate an aspiration for college education as soon as the school district receives kids. It will take into consideration non-cognitive learning and incorporate key milestones that students and their parents must meet in order to better prepare them for high school. Finally, New Haven Promise will unleash College Corps. College Corps will enlist all adults and organizations in New Haven, all who share Promise's mission on behalf of these kids, in 2 ways. First, College Corps in the high schools. College Corps in the high schools will be trained on College 101 curriculum and college essay writing skills so volunteers may further support College Summit's work in the high schools. And second, College Corps in the community, consisting of local undergraduate students, fresh themselves from the college-going process, and partnered with city adults, will canvass our communities and teams to ignite the aspirations and expectation for a college education in the parents and all of our K-8 students. We will go door to door to door. Together, these efforts will initiate, nurture, and ultimately support college-going aspiration and the work of Promise kids and their families. New Haven Promise needs to be more than a scholarship program to fulfill its mission. Ultimately, in the end, Promise has to be a citywide commitment. It can't be a university commitment. It needs to be a citywide commitment, a citywide civic enterprises that organizes all of New Haven's adults around its young people, an enterprise centered on traditional values of hard work, persistence, and initiative. And New Haven Promise will be about everybody who lives in New Haven, regardless of income, regardless of immigration status, and regardless of what past family history has told kids about what they can or cannot be. Perhaps you've heard of the concept of tikkun olam, to heal the universe. It's the idea that God created the universe but did not finish it or make it perfect, and that therefore we, each of us, have an obligation toward improving the world, that the task of healing each other is a spiritual, moral, and an individual conception of justice, and that it is in this mending mission that lends meaning to our own existence. Ultimately, Promise is more than an investment in these kids. Ultimately, it's about each and every one of us, about our optimism in ourselves and our own future. It's about rejecting being a city of victims and a choice to be a city of America's future, a city with an ascendant future. New Haven Promise Scholarship and New Haven Promise Partnership are 2 strong legs that will speed us on that journey, one of optimism and accomplishment. It's why each and every one of us in this city are confident that even in the worst of economic times, it is the best of times to test ourselves, our character, our determination, and our conviction. These are the best of times to succeed. I look forward to taking this journey with this entire community on behalf of these kids to build human infrastructure instead of the other kind. Thank you so much, and I want to talk to you. So tell me,